Dungeons and Dragons, Satan's Game. These are the experiences of two individuals as we fight our way through various evil and blood-soaked horrors known as D&D. Look and weep at the evil that awaits us. Will we survive the horrors?
I hope so.
Spoiler warning for those of you who dare to set foot. You will be spoiled.
Oh, yes.
But we'll see you at the D&D game. Greetings out there, you dungeon crawlers. Here we are, SeptumSin and Kotobuki Jake, here to discuss one of not just a little bit, but a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and LARPing films. These are films that have to either be about it or have a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons material. We'll be talking a little bit at the end about how well this represents the game in our final statements. Is this a good Dungeons and Dragons movie as far as that, or good LARPing movie when it comes to the game itself. So today's movie is the 1982 made-for-TV film Mazes and Monsters, directed by Stephen Hillard Stern. This release is the 40th anniversary release of the film. It's a nice, I like this with the little dice on it and the blood pool. And of course you've got this on the side, and you got the little backing here that says swords, potions, spells, battles, maiming, killing. Oh, well, no laughter at the end.
Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh.
But you can picture that's what they're looking at it. And this, of course, without. Now, this was released by Plumeria Pictures. I'd never heard of them before this, but they are out of Europe. I think the UK. This is an all-region disc, so you can play it in any player, presumably. Anyway. And so the inside here. Now, I had hoped as a 40th anniversary track you'd get at least a trailer, which you did not.
Get used to disappointment.
What you did get was a commentary by a bunch of people who are gamers, I guess, who many of which hadn't even seen this film before. So it's kind of like an MST3K style run-through.
Yeah.
I'd hoped to find more out about the making of the film, but this is not one of those commentaries, sadly.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
It does come with an essay that gives you a little bit more background on the film. Jake, you read it. Do you feel like it was pretty informative?
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
I would have liked to have heard more of that in the commentary. I don't know about you, but that just seems...
Yeah. I think they referenced it, if I remember correctly, but not, like, they didn't go in depth.
So Mazes and Monsters was based on a 1981 novel called The Mazes and Monsters by Rona Jaff, which was about the disappearance of a 16-year-old James Dallas Edgebert III, known as Dallas to his friends. He was a very young child. He was to go into college, much like our hat-wearing friend from the movie. He was bisexual and had been dealing with a lot of things, including his sexuality. And though the detective involved in the case found involvements of Dungeons and Dragons, many parent groups ran with this as a part of the satanic panic of the 80s, which was kind of started here. We're talking, this thing this actually happened in 1980, which is like just a year before this novel went. She was like, heck yeah, I gotta get on this. I gotta write it. So Dallas and some other students like to play it real, supposedly, in the network of steam tunnels beneath the college grounds.
Ah, you fool! You fell victim to one of the classic blunders!
Actually LARPing, so this kind of connects in both areas a little bit. Sadly, though, he had been found and then ended up shooting himself at age 17, a year after this film came out. Not in 1980. It was, yeah. But many parents. No, actually, no. He did shoot himself in 1980. But it was actually, though, not that steam tunnel incident that happened. Many parents started a campaign against D&D, still focusing more on the game than on the mental health of the young man in question. A 1984 book written by William Deere, the private investigator, called The Dungeon Master, gives a more detailed account on what happened with the 1979 case to get the facts straight. He wanted to get it as quickly as possible to avoid fictionalization
You can't handle the truth!
of the investigation. He didn't quite lean on the Dungeons and Dragons aspect, supposedly, as much as, say, the parents' groups and so on did afterwards. And he wanted to, in that book, decide that. I don't know if any of you in the comments have read either Mazes and Monsters or The Dungeon Master. I'm pretty sure that you didn't have time to get to that. I know you read fast, but not that fast, I would expect.
No.
So Mazes and Monsters follows this group of 4 well-to-do college kids as they share a bond in a mysterious game called Mazes and Monsters. The game is about pretending to be a character and trying to get all the treasure you can, or die trying.
Now, Mazes and Monsters is a fantasy role-playing game in which the players create an imaginary character. These characters are then plunged into a fantasy world of invented terrors. The point of the game is to amass a fortune without being killed. It's kind of a psychodrama, you might say.
When Robbie first joins the group, it looks like his life is opening up. But with his troubled past catching up to him, the line between reality and fantasy quickly blur. After the group seeks to make the game real by playing in the caves nearby the school, Robbie starts to lose more and more of himself, leading Robbie's friends to a race against the clock to find Robbie before the fantasy world takes him forever.
That's one of Robbie's.
The friends manage to save him before he takes his own life by jumping off the Twin Towers, but find they're a little bit too late to save him from living out the rest of his life, stuck in a fantasy world of his own, making escapes from the torment of reality.
Fully escaping? Is that what you were going for?
Yes, I think so. But essentially that's the plot of Mazes and Monsters. As you would see in the intro to these, which we haven't filmed yet, but you don't, well, you know that now because I've revealed it, but you wouldn't have known that.
Even in the future, nothing works!
But of course, this is the plot. So what did you think of this story as far as writing wise? Did it come across to you as a satanic panic style attack on D&D?
I could see how it might have fueled such things. Overall, the movie was
Boring, apparently.
Not entirely. I mean, it had its great moments, you know. But what I was going to say was that in terms of the quality of the writing, the production value, and all that stuff, it felt like a TV movie from the 80s. I mean, you know, it definitely could have been better. It definitely could have been worse. Was it a movie that was a worthy springboard for Tom Hanks. That's debatable.
Was his first lead role in a film.
Right. Although, is it really a lead role? You got. I mean,
he was billed as the lead for it, but
he was.
And this was his first film. I actually found out this actually was before Bosom Buddies and before his first appearance on The Love Boat.
Get used to disappointment.
That was his first TV appearance. And this was not a lead role. He was barely in this. He comes in after the hour mark, says some stuff, leaves.
Yeah.
So
well, basically, he's a co-lead, but I really feel like it's almost an ensemble film with the four leads. And actually, what I was looking up as we were getting ready to start, I had kind of not put two and two together at the time. I didn't really pay much attention to the cast. But Kate, the female of the group, is Wendy Cruz, and she's actually gone on to do quite a bit of stuff over the years, including the Santa Claus and some other stuff. And you got David Wizaki as Daniel and Chris Makepeace as JJ. I would almost say that JJ and Kate in particular are more... They probably get more screen time than Robbie does.
Yeah.
And, you know, Daniel's kind of the other one of the group. But he gets a fair bit of screen time, relatively speaking. But in terms of the whole Satanic Panic thing, is it something that really would have set off a lot of people? Maybe if they were primed for it? I mean, I feel like this movie in and of itself shouldn't have been able to do that, but...
And you see, a lot of people, I think, and again, I think when I look this, and this was your first time watching it, right?
Well, yes.
I mean, well, it was your second time because you watched the commentary too, but...
My first and second
yeah,
time.
so, you know, but this is not my first time with it. And I gotta say, when I look at this, every time I've had somebody talk to me about this, or say, when I watched it, when I started to watch it, I thought this is one of those that's going to demonize D&D constantly throughout. Mm-hmm. But after watching it, I'm like, not really. It's it more leans into Robbie's mental health as his reason for being out there. And even at the end, the game doesn't take a lot of the damage from this. At least not to my reckoning. It could be interpreted.
You do have that one police officer who automatically glumps onto it. And incidentally, what's his face? Murray Hamilton in a rather thankless late career role, sadly. He's kind of wasted here. But he basically just he gets the idea that they were playing this game, and so that's a big part of it, and then the reporter takes that and runs with it, and it's kind of, so you do have that I don't know, almost if it was made if it was made today, I would almost feel like it could have been made almost the same way and be seen as thumbing its nose at that whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, it would almost be, you could almost do a meta satire of...
Sort of like Dark Dungeons, which we'll cover later in this series.
Yeah.
Now, I also find it interesting that the character... God, what was that guy wearing the hats? What was his name? The character? JJ. You see, what's funny is that Dallas was more like JJ than he was about Robbie. And in a way, when you look at it, you could actually consider, if you are new to this and you had read the source material and you're like, JJ would seem more like the character who would have done that. He even talked about suicide at one time.
He does, yes.
And the real character, I swear a lot of people tend to connect the stories too much. Mm-hmm. They just connect he went into the steam tunnels and killed himself because of the game. That's not how it happened. He went to the steam tunnels, yes, he intended to kill himself. He left push pins and like a corkboard in the shape of a gun. And he intended to overdose in the steam tunnels, and like many overdoses happen, he ended up passing out, then waking up later and goes, oh crap, I guess I didn't kill myself. Mm-hmm. He had around for a while, and then eventually came there. It was like over like 2 years later, I think 80, that he ended up killing himself. Mm-hmm. A good long ways after this whole playing it real, after he had left college, after he had left the D&D scene. And a lot of people don't get that disconnect.
Ah, you fool! You fell victim to one of the classic blunders.
They just automatically say, yeah, see, D&D killed this guy. It's not as bad as it used to be. But in the 80s, that was all the rage. We got to live through the Satanic Panic because it was going well into the early 90s. You remember that, right? They were always like, Satanists killed a bunch of people on the news or something like that.
I don't know if I definitely wasn't all that aware of it, but I have a feeling that it might have influenced some of my upbringing, because if you watch the movies Galore and whatever, you'll hear me talk about some of the things I missed out on growing up. Like we talked a couple weeks ago, we did Beavis and Butthead Do America, and well, it's not a couple weeks ago at the time this will be airing, but but then you get the idea. We discussed that, and I mentioned that growing up, I would not have been allowed to watch Beavis and Butthead. You know, there were things like that we were not allowed to watch.
Would they have you play this?
Well, I don't know. It never came up. But I don't think they had an issue with fantasy. I mean, you know, we grew up with The Princess Bride and Never-Ending Story and Willow and stuff like that. So my parents were always really weird that way. Yeah. But like we weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons. We weren't allowed to watch Fresh Prince. We didn't have cable, and one of the reasons why was that there was nothing good on, worth watching. So there, I feel like maybe that influenced them in that way.
But hey, that's just a theorizing, a game theorizing.
But I really don't know. I was too young to be sure.
Well, let's talk acting. So, I thought, as far as this is actually probably, at the time, this was definitely his biggest film role for Tom Hanks, that's saying nothing, considering this was his second film role.
Right.
And he had been in Bosom Buddies at this point.
Right.
And he had done, 1 or 2 episodes of Love Boat.
Yeah.
No, 1 episode of Love Boat. It was, he did He Knows You're Alone, then an episode of The Love Boat, and then Bosom Buddies. Matter of fact, it literally went August, October, November of the same year. I was looking at it up on IMDb as it went, and I was just like, man, that was busy. He was a busy man when he got started.
Well, he's always been busy. He's still busy.
But I thought he did a really good job of playing Robbie in this film. Mm-hmm. I actually liked how most of the 4 main characters played it out. I mean, I don't know. What did you think? I mean, that scene at the end with the Twin Towers, of course, that gave me a little bit
He also had episodes of Taxi and Happy Days.
What was it, before 82?
82.
Okay.
Yep.
So, hey, busy man.
And in 83, 84, he had a recurring role in Family Ties. And then Splash. And Splash was really the movie that cemented him as an actor.
A true leading role at that point.
And then Bachelor Party, so back to the quality there.
It's got to be the king.
But what did you think? You think he did pretty good on that?
I think he did fine. I think he was... He did fine. I've not actually seen Bosom Buddies or any of his guest spots on these other shows. I mean, I grew up with Family Ties, so I maybe saw that and didn't even know who it was. But the earliest thing that I saw him in that I remember knowing it was Tom Hanks at the time was Dragnet. And And I would say by the time he did Splash and Dragnet, he definitely had gotten into a groove of being a really solid actor. Here, he's still getting there.
I think
he did good, but it was like, you know.
I mean, that part, like, when he's in New York, I think he did pretty good about being, like, in his monk persona, where he's sitting there and he's talking to the guy in the sewers, like, oh, you're the king.
Yes, that was pretty fun. Well, partly it's because that guy did a good job playing off of him.
And he has a pretty good... That guy played the king. He has a pretty decent number of voice acting roles. And the other three did pretty well. I thought they played well off of each other.
So Chris Makepeace is JJ. He does not have a lot of credits, but he's got some. And I did see The Falcon and the Snowman. That was a pretty decent one. And he was in Meatballs, apparently.
Oh,
couple of roles.
I need to rewatch Meatballs. I have all of them
I'm
now.
not certain I've ever seen it.
It's been so many years.
And David Wysocki is the other guy, and that name does not ring a bell for me. He has a lot of small, like
little
bit
TV
roles.
things?
Yeah, TV roles.
Well, we talked about the female, the actress.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'll say this: when it goes across, the parents do come across as being aloof, disconnected, and in some cases jerks, like Tom Hanks's Robbie's parents.
The parents generally were assholes in this one.
That was.
Kate, her mom is. They get along pretty cool. Apparently, the worst thing there is that her dad remarried, and apparently. Both of her parents apparently moved on really fast.
And she has this string of relationships that just don't work.
Right.
Including this one, so...
Right.
Let's keep moving.
Okay.
Special effects. Now, there wasn't a lot.
Such as they are.
There was some costume work. I kind of like that Gorgon thing that they did. I thought it was pretty cool, that monster costume. And
Yeah.
I mean, for a TV movie, it was actually not a bad costume.
Right.
And especially one done in 1980, for goodness sakes. And that cave set was not too bad either. It kind of looked like a real cave.
Right.
So, it's not too bad. What did you think of was there anything that particularly struck you as special? I like the map that Robbie drew of New York, which you find is later New York.
Other than that, not really. It was pretty standard. Again, pretty standard for an 80s TV movie, which is kind of neither good nor bad,
So, let's talk music.
Okay.
God, the music in this. I can still hear it in my head.
Music by Haygood Hardy.
You tell me, is that music was kind of... Okay, that said 79, 80 right there. It felt like that.
I could see that. Let's see here. What is some of the stuff this guy has done? He did a lot of stuff connected to Anne of Green Gables. But, not an enormous number of stuff. He followed this up with Care Bears in the Land Without Feelings.
Woo!
And he also, like I said, though, he did a lot of Anne of Green Gables stuff. And a few others here and there. So an interesting assortment.
The music definitely felt like a early 80s TV movie.
Yeah.
With a little bit of that 70s hang-off in there.
Also, a couple of really loud pop songs, if I remember correctly. With Friends in This World is actually music by Haygood Hardy, written and performed by Judy Lander, and Cal Dodd is the other performer. Yeah.
So, would you listen
That song
to
did
this?
scream 80s.
Would you listen to this soundtrack on its own?
Probably not.
Do you think the soundtrack did its job?
More or less. That song was, but the music itself played pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts.
Okay.
So, to me, Mazes and Monsters is a milestone film. As much of a kind of cheesy TV movie and throwaway movie as this would be under a normal basis, the fact that it did get surrounded by the satanic panic and the infamous suicide that most people end up talking about when it comes to the D&D games, it will, in my opinion, be forever tied to the game at large. And to Tom Hanks as an unfortunate aside.
Yeah, from what I hear, he kind of liked to forget about this one, but
So what are your final thoughts on this?
well, one could almost call the movie a bit exploitive in that regard. But it overall, I found it moderately entertaining, forgettable, neither good nor bad. Kind of a moderately embarrassing start for Hanks's career, and for some of the other people, kind of an embarrassing, not really an end for Murray Hamilton, but it was definitely later on in his career. Again, I'm not as familiar with the story and everything with this satanic panic as you are. Like, I read the article on this one and everything, but I will say that the fact that they rushed to do the novel and the movie really does smack of exploitation, which is unfortunate. And there is the fact that the movie is held as part of the origin of the whole thing. It definitely shows how people will glomp onto things, whether it's important or not, or whether it makes sense or not. But to end on a high note, this movie does have two extraordinarily awesome things going for it. One is JJ's collection of hats.
Yes.
It is unfortunate that as the movie goes on, he apparently runs out. I think they just ran out of the budget.
The hat budget was the highest budget in the that's one of the people who were commenting.
So, yes, every time you see JJ for the first half of the film, he has a different hat on. And some of them make sense, but some of them not so much.
Yeah.
I think he uses the motorbike thing a couple of times because it's actually useful. But most of the others were more
cowboy hat.
And the first time he's wearing a hat with a spike, and his mother looks at him and says, "You've grown." And then, okay, even though it's horrible, absolutely horrible, and shows what a horrible person she is, when he walks into his room and they've turned it into a medical facility. But the other thing is his mana bird that says birds can't talk.
Birds can't talk.
Birds can't talk. I just love that. I'm like, okay.
I did like where the mother changed
the bird was best character.
The mother changing it at the end of the Casablanca style set, and he's like, "Ooh, I like this."
Right. Which she'll change it again.
Yes.
That's...
So the last thing we're going to do is something that we're going to be doing throughout this adventure that we are on. This is our first quest in the adventure. So we're going to be giving them a rating on two areas. One rating of 1 to 10 on its strength and connection to Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop RPGs in general. And then the second rating of 1 to 10 will be the strength of its connection to LARPing in general. Now, this strength of connection does not only mean that it kind of generally is to the side of it, but also accuracy in the game. Now, to me, as far as the tabletop score is concerned, I will give it a 6 because it does definitely link, but in the accuracy notes to the game is where it suffers. I will also do LARPing at about the same because it is LARPing that they're doing, but the whole... Actually, I might even give LARPing another... I'll give it up to a 7, actually, because I think it's closer in LARPing, but still, they kind of tie it in that, oh my gosh, they're doing some crazy stuff. But what would you say? What would your rating on the... What would be the tabletop rating for you?
Actually, that brings up a point. Now, I wonder if this is another area where this movie was unusually influential, maybe not in a good way, as I feel like a lot of times when you see references to D&D or gaming or whatever, you'll see what they do in this movie, where people talk about how they have a character, and that is their character. And it's like, I've done a lot of gaming, and it's, no, you do a new character for every game, you know. Now, I know there's different approaches, and probably people do that, but it seems like that is a common thing in film and television.
Freelick jumps into the pit to gather the treasure. How much does Freelick get?
It's a trap.
No.
The pit is filled with sharp, gem-encrusted spikes. Freelick, the fanatic of Glossamere, is impaled and dies.
Part do you save him? Use your power to raise the dead.
Well, I can't. I don't have enough points to raise the dead.
Oh, hell.
And I feel like maybe this movie is part of the reason why.
And
it struck me as weird.
When the guy's character died, I do admit, I give him credit. I always used to connect it to the Chick comics, which came later, by the way. It came about 2 years later in '84, where the character died. So the character died. Well, you have to die in real life now, and kill himself. And this guy's like treats it more like an annoyance that his character died. That now it's going to take me all that time to get back up again.
Yeah.
But he was already on to something else, so it really didn't bother him that much, so I'll give it that.
Right, so what are we going to do now?
I'd like to propose a new game.
But yes.
Another thing we'll give it is that we've been there.
Yes,
we'll just leave it at that. Where that character, what he experienced, we've been there.
Lots and lots of times.
But, so I will say, on the tabletop ranking, I have to agree with you that...
connection and accuracy.
That the film definitely incorporated both very much. The accuracy was suspect, so I would probably edge just slightly lower.
Like a 5?
Maybe a 5 and a 6 on the two scores. Yeah.
So we're kind of in agreement in that fact that it's really the accuracy that drags the numbers down. At least that's my thought. Is it's because they do connect to both, and LARPing was also a big thing in the 70s as well as D&D. Those were being played very well in the 70s. So it's just kind of cool to see it in films. It is kind of sad that it's connected by blood. But with that being said...
I guess we could say one more note about one reason with my accuracy note. Just I don't know if it'll influence yours. But this is essentially, they made up a game for the book. Yes. And then the movie. So... one could argue that, well, it's a fictional game, you know, it's accurate to what they wanted it to be, but they could have done a better job of actually creating the game if that was the case. Like, I'm sure in some of the later ones we'll be judging on how accurate it is to an existing game, but in this one it's more like, did you set something up and follow through?
So, to wrap this episode, we have a D&D score, a tabletop score of 5.5, just edging over the halfway point, showing a connection to the game, but not an accurate connection. And,
no XP for you!
And a LARPing score of 6.5, showing a little bit more of an accurate connection, but not quite there. That darn satanic nature and that darned bad boy D&D plan tended to move it, especially considering how popular the one guy was.
Oh, yeah, we gotta mention that. JJ was like the social center of campus.
Yeah, the 16-year-old nerd that graduated up. It's like that thing in...
It's the hats, man.
It's
Everyone wanted the hats.
It's like the scene in Dark Dungeons where like, the D&D players are here. Like, they're the big sinners of the party.
Yeah.
But with that being said, 5.5 and 6.5. But we'll see you on the next episode of Tabletop Horror.